Hello there, welcome back to my channel. I wanted to add this little extension to my last video where I talked about the adjustment and healing layers that Aftershot Pro has available by giving you a little bit more insight into how this system works. And I've chosen this scene here, shot a couple of months ago on the coast here in South Africa, as like an indirect sunset scene, which has a couple of very dark areas and some lens flare artifacts to it that I want to remove from the overall image. So we have, in terms of lens flares, there because of the sun being slightly off to the right of the camera. We have them here coming in from the top right. There's one greenish one over here, and then there's a slightly dimmer one over here that isn't that bad, but I still find it annoying. And then, yeah, as I said, the little one over here. So what I want to do is I want to use the layers system in Aftershot Pro to get rid of these first. So we can start the blemish remover quickly down here, which creates a healing, cloning, and blemish removal layer. Or we can just simply open the layer manager by clicking on this icon and then just adding a healing and cloning layer to this. So the healing and cloning, heal, clone, blemish layer, healing layer for short, works a little bit different than the adjustment layer, but I'll get into that in a little bit. So we could choose different types of area marking tools. We have the circle, we have the polygon tool, and we have the Bezier curve tool. The brush doesn't work for the healing and cloning layers. So let's take a look at how this works by first removing this bigger greenish lens flare here. And by just clicking into the scene while being on the active blemish layer, you add a cloning selection. Let's pick this one. And the red one refers to the area that you want to clone from. And the darker one, you mark the area with that you want to be replaced. When you move them around while clicking and holding on this one, you move both. And if you click onto the red one, you just move this one to basically mark the area that you want to clone from. And in this case, that already works really well. With the cursor at the center, you increase the cloning area. And with the cursor being in the feather area and using the mouse wheel, you decrease or increase the feathering area. If you select on the blemish layer, you can see all the areas that all the selections that you have made for one layer. And when you click on the main layer is active and everything is hidden, and you can check what the area now looks like. And this already looks pretty good. I think I can ramp the feathering up a little bit more. By selecting the dot here, the circle, not the dot, the circle. And I can now work a little bit more in this area. I think I need to ramp up the feathering a little bit more, go back to the main layer. Yeah, that looks okay. Maybe not as much as I wanted it to. You can still see a circular area here, a little bit too much. So let's take a look at the circle here again. Decrease. Increase. And maybe pick a slightly different area for the cloning tool that has a little bit more of the haziness that the original area has. Check again by clicking on the main layer. That looks much better. Then we have this area here. And of course, areas like this are a little bit tricky because we have a lot of different structures here. So it might get a bit tricky. We might have to choose a different approach. But let's see what it does. Let's see how it works out. And adding a new circle clone area is quite easy when you have everything here selected. Select the circular selection tool and just click into the scene. You create a new circle clone area that you now can adjust and work with. That actually works better than expected. And with Control and the mouse wheel, you can zoom in and out even when you're in this mode. That worked better than expected. That actually works better than the area up here. Let's check with the main layer again. And yeah, like if you don't know where it is, I think you will have a hard time figuring out which area here has been cloned and which hasn't been. Okay, so let's take care of the last little lens flare down here. Same approach. Select the circular tool again. And when with the health layer selected, we just copy this area here, and that little speck that annoys us is pretty much gone. I think with this one I can even go smaller. That's a little bit too small. And done. Nobody will even know that it was there. Okay, so yeah, as you can see, the healing and cloning, the blemish remover tool, is actually quite efficient. It of course depends a little bit on what your image is like. In some areas you might see a little bit more that something has been cloned, because I know where it is. I can see the circular area not being perfectly fine. But to be honest, by just going and adding a new one, to cover up the roundishness of this thing. Is roundishness a word? I don't know. I just made it a word, I guess. And decreasing the feathering a little bit because it's too much stuff being copied right now. I can try to actually change this up a little bit. Maybe increase the feathering on this one. And you can see when you hover the mouse over these areas, you affect the one that the mouse is over. Very easy to use. Go back to the main layer. And now we have another problem here with that circle. Gets a bit tricky sometimes, I guess. So what happens if I go up here? now we get a little bit more greenish because of the area that I'm cloning from not being the best area that I can get. Overwrites a little. This should work better. Yeah, definitely. Okay. The green is gone. It doesn't look that round anymore. And of course, this is very zoomed in. So if you have it full screen, you won't be able to tell that there has been some cloning going on in that area. So now let's move to the adjustment layers. The adjustment layers work, if you remember and if you've seen the previous video, you know what the adjustment layers do. They are basically, you can basically use an adjustment layer to make changes to an area on top of what you've changed in the main layer. I usually use that quite often. For this one, the circular tool doesn't really, you can use it, but it doesn't really work that well. What I use very often is the polygon tool. So if you have one adjustment layer here and you choose to click into the scene using the polygon tool, you can pretty much draw a rough outline around the area that you want to change with a couple of new settings. Yeah, for instance, this area I want to brighten up a little bit and brighten the shadows. I want to brighten the shadows of this area a little bit. So I go around the brighter areas here. All the way to the bottom. Hey, stay in the image, that helps. Come on. Yeah. And then by simply double clicking, you get out of the editing mode. And now you can see this is our feathering. It works the same as with the circular tools or any other tool. But now I have an adjustment layer here that I can edit this area in particular with. So let's go and brighten up the shadows here a little bit. For this one, I just simply use the fill light option. And this, of course, I mentioned this in a couple of videos earlier, where I mainly changed the entire image. But this is definitely a tool that you want to apply if you want to really emphasize certain areas, or you need to fix certain areas to make an image look even better. It takes more time, it's more tedious, but it definitely helps quite a bit with enhancing your image even more. So in this one, I will just increase the contrast a little bit in this area, and then work with the color curves as well, just as an example. Hey, come on. Give it a little bit more vibrance. And now this area looks a lot different. When you turn the adjustment layer off in the manager up here, you can switch between the original look and the look that you achieved through the adjustments that you made on this particular layer. I'm still not too happy with the shadows here, so add maybe a little bit more fill light. That is better. And of course, you can choose to add another polygon layer here. I'll do this for the sky. The mountain area is way too underexposed. There's not much that I can save here, but that's okay. This is just for demonstration purposes. And then the feathering, of course, helps. You don't have to be too precise with placing these polygons, or the control points for the polygons. Let's get this one over here. And now double click, and we have the selection here. And what you can see here immediately is, by having defined this area as well, the same adjustments that you made for this layer are now true in this area as well. So if you want to change these in a different way, you would have to create a separate adjustment layer. So let's do this quickly by copying this adjustment layer. Yeah, of course now I get twice the effect because I have two of these layers doing the same thing. But what I'll do now is I'll just, this is polygon area number 1. That was the first one. I don't want the top area to work with this, and I don't want this area, this adjustment layer, to work with the lower area. So I can just turn them off, or actually remove them. And now this layer, for the sky part, I can now adjust individually. Let's say I want to remove the fill light effect, and I wanted to have less vibrance, but I want to let's say get the blue in the sky area to be a little bit more saturated. So I add vibrancy to the blue and the cyan part. And give it more luminance. Let's adjust the contrast a little bit. Maybe add a few more highlights. And adjust the midtones a little bit. Maybe even ramp up the orange vibrancy and the yellow. So now what we've got are a few more adjustments that now have an effect on the overall image. Again, just to demonstrate, this is before editing or without the adjustment layer. This is having the adjustment layer effects on, and the same for the separate adjustment layer at the bottom. And this is how we got this effect going. Going back to the main layer, you can see them all combined without those selection areas and the markers, and everything works as it should. Um, Not saying this is a perfect image, I just wanted to show you how these things work in Aftershot Pro, and how you can use them, and I hope this helps. Okay, I hope you liked it. If you hit the like button, um, subscribe, hit the bell, and I hopefully see you in the next video. Leave your comments, leave your questions in the comment area below, and have a good one. Bye bye, guys.